There are shadows in the darkness, but people cannot discern them. There are trails in the sky where birds fly, but people cannot recognize them. There are paths in the sea along which fish swim, but people cannot perceive them. All people and things of the four continents are reflected in the moon, without a single exception. But people cannot see them. But they are visible to the enlightened eye, mind. In like manner, ordinary people cannot see that the treasure tower, the mental location wherein Gohonzon lies, the gateway to Buddhism and Buddhahood, exists within the body of Nichiren or any of us. But Shakyamuni, many treasures and the Buddhas of the 10 directions perceive it, because those personages, those Buddhas, are enlightenment. They're there waiting for our experience. I, Nichiren, also presume this to be the case. How praiseworthy that you are the container of the Gohonzon, Buddha-ness, the treasure tower. Now, you've heard me talk about this before, but think about the examples you just gave. I really want you to think about this. If any of you have had the pleasure or the arduousness of creating an animation, and I don't mean with software that makes it, but even if you use software, there's a process known as tweening, which is a distillation of the word betweening. And in animation, what you do is you draw your stick figure or Yogi Bear or whatever it is in one position on the page. Say you have a page, and that's your frame, okay? And you draw your one character here, and then you draw your character where you want it to end up in a certain amount of time. And then you have to draw that same character, slowly changing every little aspect of it to demonstrate it walking or moving or sliding, however you want it to move between this position and that position. Maybe it does somersaults, whatever. That process of filling in between those two positions is called tweening or betweening. I bring that up, the animation thing, because it makes you very intimately aware of something we're not normally engaged in being aware of. And this is exactly what Nichiren is talking about. When a bird flies across the sky, it goes from there to there. And every little moment it exists between there and there is a path. We don't perceive the path. We just go, oh, it flew from there to there. But maybe it zigzagged before it got there. Maybe it went directly there. Maybe it went up and down there, and we don't even see that because of our point of view. Same with you and I. Same with the grass. Everything, moment to moment, is constantly instantiating. If you had to draw each one of those characters, each one of them would seem the character in itself, would it not? So here's this time component in Buddhism again, basically saying to us that when you walk from the couch to the kitchen, how many of you exist between the couch and the kitchen? If you instantiate moment to moment in your life, how many moments are there between the couch and the kitchen? Because with your enlightened eye, you will understand that there are that many of you. The idea of you starts to fall apart. What there is you-ness. There is a suchness that is encapsulated in your idea of you that exists moment to moment, even when you're just sitting there on the couch. But it's easier to illustrate by moving you from the couch to the kitchen, because you can actually visualize you all the way to the kitchen. This isn't fanciful talk. This isn't analogy. This is actual. We exist moment to moment, instantiating potential in each of those moments. It's really not that hard to imagine, especially if you consider walking from the couch to the kitchen barefoot and you step on something in the carpet and your mood, your idea of life, everything changes in an instant if you step on something sharp. You're not the same person you were sitting on the couch. Oh, but Sylvain, I'm the same person. I'm just now feeling pain. I understand the samsaric mind wants to tie all of that together in a string. But the Buddhist mind is telling you, consider that string is the imagination, is the delusion, and the reality is this constantly reoccurring set of tendencies and conditions. Can you do that? Does that not change the way you understand life? That is the engine of life. The cause, the energy, the formation of that every moment instantiation is the engine of life. If you can begin to really immerse yourself in what that represents, what that means, the way that changes your perception of the world, that everything you experience is doing exactly that. Because when I'm animating my character from this side of the page to that side of the page, not only am I redrawing every frame in between, every moment, but I'm having to redraw the background or copy it. It's still a form of redrawing. Right? Like the old cartoons where Fred Flintstones is running through the house and going by the same chair and window 6 times. It doesn't matter that it's the same chair and window and that the perspective of the chair doesn't change as he goes through the room. It matters that there's something going by him that implies motion. What is the engine of life outside of animations? We are animated beings. And as animated beings, being constructed moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, there's no difference between my suchness, your suchness, the suchness of suchness. Right? This is a very big aha moment. And what Nichiren is pointing out is that the treasure tower, what we identify, what the chapter in the Lotus Sutra identifies as this coming to enlightenment, this coming to realization, with this beatific understanding of equanimity, It's inherent not only in everything, but all the time. And if it's all the time, the idea of time, it really doesn't have any distance. It doesn't have any endurance. It's a moment-to-moment instantiation. There's no permanence to it. Just like watching a bird fly from that tree to that tree, we can't look up in the sky after its journey is complete and identify, look, there's the bird when it was there, there's the bird when it was there. And yet it was. But we can't identify it now. But that doesn't mean it wasn't there. Time is this amorphous, kind of invisible, a way of the mind to order, perceive, identify. Hi, my friends. Welcome. Welcome to Sylvain's Word Salad. We'll continue with Nichiren and his discussions. My point again, that when he's talking about the treasure tower and time and these paths, he is defining Gohonzon. He is defining that aspect of our minds that can perceive this. Right? You can't reach up in the sky and grab that pathway of the bird, but you know it. Any more than you can run back and down the hallway from the couch to the kitchen and catch yourself walking. But you know you did. You know you existed in that moment and the following one and the following one. You know that. You don't have to grab it and shake it around and go, who's me? You are being in each moment. You are manifesting in each moment. And that moment you arise, you endure, and you dissolve. Each moment. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. I know at first this is very mind-bending. It almost seems mystical, but it isn't. It's the process of formation. It's the process of life. It's the engine of life. Thank you for your practice and supporting this channel, this resource, not just YouTube, but the threefoldlotus.com website, the bookstore, the ebooks now available on threefoldlotus.com. Thank you for purchasing those. It really helps the channel out. But of course, as always, thank you for your practice. Nichiren goes on, King Wen of the Tao dynasty was victorious in battle because he took care to provide for elderly people. During the 37 reigns spanning 800 years in which his descendants ruled, there were some incidents of misgovernment, but on the whole, the Chao dynasty prospered due to that fundamental virtue. It didn't forget about the elderly. It took care of them. King Ajatasattu, though a most evil man, negative influence man, was able to hold the throne for 90 years owing to the merit of his father, King Bimbisara, who had made offerings to the Buddha for several years. The same principle holds true today. I do not think the present regime will last long. As it opposes the Lotus Sutra. Right, Nembutsu or true word, depending on which elite we're discussing. Yet probably because of the excellent leadership of the late acting administrator and the former government governor of Musashi, who became a lay monk, it appears to be secure for the time being. The lasting effect of causes influences, right? Because cause and effect are immediate, but the influence they impart on the momentum, right, through time. But in this case, too, the present government will eventually collapse if it continues its enmity toward Myoho Renge-kyo, the Lotus Sutra. The government officials mistakenly think that while the Nembutsu monks are friendly to the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren is hostile to the Nembutsu. This ungrateful monk, right? And they claim to have confidence in both teachings. I, Nichiren, say in rebuttal, if nothing is vitally wrong with the present government, then why have such unprecedented epidemics, famines, and wars broken out? Why have the authorities twice subjected the votary of the Lotus Sutra to grave punishment without allowing him to confront the other schools? Let me have those public debates we're also famous for centuries, right? It's always been the norm in China and Japan. Let me at him. Let me say my piece. Won't let him do so. How pitiful. How unfortunate. Even under such circumstances, as a woman, you've inherited the life of the Lotus Sutra. In fact, you've inherited the life of the parents of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions. Again, time being irrelevant here. Enlightenment is enlightenment. Is there anyone else in the entire land of Jambudvipa who possesses such good fortune? With my deep respect, Nichiren, the 25th day of the 6th month, replied to Tichinyo. A very encouraging letter to this woman. But we should read that letter as though it was written to you and I personally, because that's what he's saying. That you and I are the treasure tower itself. We are Gohonzon. If for but the delusions of our everyday attachments to the formations, to the forms. The formations, if we can get our minds around the formations, then we cease to be held back by form and live in the moment-to-moment instantiation of being. With that enlightenment, with that knowing of self and other as the same process, the engine of life, our lives become liberated and beautiful. And with that, we close that letter. The next letter, the persecution at Tatsunokuchi, I have a little forward on it. When you read this letter, please be mindful of the words and their intent. When Nichiren speaks of Buddha lands, he is referencing the ceremony in the sky and the experience of enlightenment, the land of tranquil light. When Nichiren speaks of the samsaric realms of the lower world, quote unquote, using terms like falling or descent into, right? He is referencing the same Lotus teachings of the separation from the earthly and the mundane to the rising into the sky of our mind's experience. So, that's a preparatory note for this next letter. Let's see, did I say who he wrote this to? To Shijo Kingo. who, as you know, led the horse on which Nichiren was bound on his way to his death. Don't worry, it didn't happen, but it came awfully close, yeah? So let's go ahead. We've got time. We can get into this. I cannot adequately express my gratitude for your frequent letters, he says to Shijo Kingo. At the time of my persecution on the 12th, not only did you accompany me to Tatsunokuchi, but you also declared that you would die by my side. This can only be called wondrous. Not that you would die, but your level of commitment so strong, so profound. How many are the places where I have thrown away my life in past existences for the sake of my wife and children, lands and followers? I have given up on my life in the mountains and the seas, on the rivers, on the seashore, and by the roadside. Never once, however, did I die for the Lotus Sutra or suffer persecution for the Daimoku. Hence, none of the ends I met enabled me to attain Buddhahood. I was always throwing all of my energies toward earthly desires, earthly accomplishments, until I became the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Now, my life has profound meaning, and the energies I throw into it have profound influence and repercussions. Hence, none of the ends I met enabled me to attain Buddhahood. Because I did not attain Buddhahood, the seas and rivers where I threw away my life were not the Buddha lands, right? I was living in samsara. Same actions, but not amounting to much, just samsaric play. In this life, however, as the votary of the Lotus Sutra, in these moments, now living, moment to moment, I was exiled and put to death, exiled to Ito and beheaded at Tatsunokuchi. He's playing with time a little bit as this. He's survived it, obviously, but his life was playing out in this way, yes? Tatsunokuchi in Sagami province is the place where Nichiren gave his life. So now he's saying, this event where I was to be beheaded is where I stopped having any reference or idea in myself as Nichiren, the fisherman's son, the student of Buddhism, the priest, the monk, and realized from that moment on that every cell and energetic particle in my life had only one purpose. In a way, reborn from moment to moment as no longer wandering, looking, aiming, but actually being with every moment of his existence, his being, the votary of the Lotus Sutra. It's a very momentous, and groups of Buddhists who've studied this letter point to it as it's a mental shift, but some take it too literally, of course, as always happens, as the actual rebirth of Nichiren. But it's a mental switch, yeah? To be working towards something and then to suddenly own it, be it, is no small thing. So this is what Nichiren is confessing, if you will, to Shijo Kingo, and honoring Shijo Kingo for being the witness, a witness, of this transition. I'm no longer just a monk talking about the Lotus Sutra and Shakyamuni's teachings. I am the votary, the messenger, the prophet, the bodhisattva of Shakyamuni's teachings, Buddhahood itself. Because he died there for the Lotus Sutra, how could it be anything less than the Buddha land? He experienced his full enlightenment that day. I'm not going to die. I'm alive. I now have only one purpose. How amazing. We all want that, don't we? The sutra reads, quote, in the Buddha lands of the 10 directions, there is only the law of the one vehicle, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, the engine of life. Once you perceive the engine of life, nothing else measures up. Does this not bear out my assertion? The law of the one vehicle is the Lotus Sutra, Myoho Renge Kyo. No true teaching other than the Lotus Sutra exists in any of the Buddha lands of the 10 directions. The sutra continues, quote, there are not two, there are not three, except when the Buddha preaches so as an expedient means, end quote. This being so, then every place where Nichiren meets persecution is the Buddha land. It's just validation. Of all the places in the Saha world, it is at Tatsunokuchi in Katase of Sagami province in Japan that Nichiren's life dwells. Because he gave his life there for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, he's even speaking of himself in the third person. That's how much he's divorced himself from his earthly being, just a man, that Nichiren, that guy's dead and gone. He doesn't exist anymore. With every breath I take, I am the votary of the Lotus Sutra. That's something different than the bipedal fisherman's son who was preaching and studying about it. See, it's a paradigm shift, yeah? Tatsunokuchi deserves to be called the land of tranquil light. Most people would call Tatsunokuchi the place where Nichiren was almost killed, beheaded. But Nichiren says, no. The old Nichiren was beheaded, for real. The Nichiren who is the votary of the Lotus Sutra, born from that moment. See, when you understand moment to moment, the complete transmigration from the couch to the kitchen, it just happens, right? This is what the supernatural powers chapter means when it states, quote, whether in a garden, a forest, or mountain valleys, or the wild wilderness, in such places have the Buddhas entered nirvana. It's not about location physically, it's about location mentally. Where the Gohonzon is. That gateway. You accompanied Nichiren vowing to give your life as a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Your deed is 100,000, 10,000 times greater than that of Hong Wen Yen, who cut open his stomach and inserted the liver of his dead lord, Duke Yi, to save him from shame and dishonor. When I reach Eagle Peak, when I attain complete, full enlightenment, I will first tell how Shijo Kingo, like myself, resolved to die for the Lotus Sutra. I have heard unofficially that by the order of the Lord Kamakura, I am to be exiled to Sado province. Among the 3 heavenly sons of light, the god of the moon saved my life at Tatsunokuchi by appearing as a shining object, and the god of the stars descended 4 or 5 days ago to greet me. Now only the God of the sun remains, and he is certain to protect me. How reassuring. How encouraging. The teacher of the law chapter states, quote, I will dispatch persons conjured who will act to guard and protect them. End quote. This passage leaves no room for doubt. The, quote, peaceful practices chapter reads, quote, swords and staves will not touch him. The Universal Gateway chapter states, quote, the executioner's sword will be broken into bits. There is nothing false in these sutra passages. The strong and steadfast power of strong resolve is precious indeed. With my deep respect, Nichiren. Now, what did he just say in that last paragraph? Yes, it talks about locations and places and quotes of chapters, but what is he saying? I will tell you. He is talking about mental conditions, the mind. That with this kind of resolve, the last sentence, the strong and steadfast power of strong resolve is precious indeed. If you've ever competed in a sport, and I'll end the video on this brief analogy. I have experienced it myself, so you must have in some endeavor where I remember as a young teen in it might have been junior high. Yeah. I was a tubby little kid. And I was new to the United States in Southern California. I'd come from Canada. So I was the foreigner. I was the funny-looking kid. I was fat kid. So in PE class, you might well imagine, I was not the first to be chosen when teams were drawn. And the same was true on a day where the class was divvied up into, I guess, groups of 4 to do a running relay, right? Familiar with those? Where you pass a baton to one another. And anyway, I was on the team of misfits, the team that was left over. Okay, you guys are a team. Nobody wanted you, right? Okay. And even before I knew this was going to happen, because this wasn't the first time stuff like this went on. So I thought, well, I'm going to end up with the other dregs. And sure enough, I ended up being the, what do you call it, the last leg, the final, I forget there's a term for it, but at any rate. So I watched the first round around the track as the competitive group of kids were all changing the lead from one to the second baton to the third baton. And I could see my team, the team I was, anchoring, finally came up with the word, just steadily falling back. Poor guys, some of them just ran all perfunctory. You know, it was an age. Excuse me. We were at that age, pubescent. We weren't fully grown into our limbs, and one of the guys on our team, he ran like his legs and arms were just going all over the place, and another kid just didn't really know how to run. I mean, it was pathetic. You know, I was in the group, and I didn't spite them for it. I just okay. But what kept going through my head was, I'm going to blow everyone away. I don't know why I thought this. But it's like a little bit of me was fed up, but there's just this strong conviction that was welling up with every step, every other one, every baton pass. I was like, I'm going to be something other than myself. I'm going to see myself. This is before positive thinking and visualizations and all that. I just was really hyping up my mind. You know where this is going, but seriously, I'm not making this up. Something happened when the baton hit my hand and I started to run. And as I started to run, it's almost like I was observing myself. It wasn't really me. And I was watching my legs and feet do something I'd never seen before. It almost seemed as though my feet were reaching out way in front of me and pulling me along, like I was riding my own body. Does that make sense? It was the strangest feeling. And my world just became this kind of, you know how they do that in movies where the focus, the depth of field, or not depth of field, the field of focus. It's just like a small sphere around me and everything else was obfuscated. Bokeh, they call it, right? And all I could do is see these legs going out in front of me. I was so entertained. It's like I was forgetting that I was having to breathe and all that. I was just, wow, look at my legs go. Are they my legs? And every now and again, I would be passing somebody. This is not a fanciful story. This is my experience that day. Anyway, long story short, I passed everybody. We won. We won. The four misfits who nobody wanted on their team. Against all the pretty boys and the athletics and the guy on the softball team and wiped them all out. Now, you don't have to believe me about this. It happened. And for me, it took me a while to land on earth after that. I mean, it's the only way I can say it. I was incredulous. I wrestled, and I don't remember for how long, with the fact that that actually happened. A lot of embarrassed faces, I remember that, but I just was all in my own head thinking, this thing that I've been studying, the Kung Fu series was big on TV. So, and before that, I was raised in Canada to think the teachers that I had around me, that were around my martial arts father, the things that I was hearing about mind over matter when I was a kid, and all of this stuff about making up your mind. And again, this was before all the cliches about self-help and visualizations and so forth. It was just philosophy talking about if you applied yourself in your mind, you could do spectacular things. Now, I always thought those were interesting words, but I never felt them. I always wondered what it would be like. Well, that day, I knew. That day, I thought, I have to keep practicing. How did I do that? How did I just make that mindset happen? Because the result of that mindset changed everything. And it wasn't about winning. It wasn't about that. It was about altering the fait accompli, altering the pattern, altering the given, changing what always seems to be happening. I wanted something different. I got it. And then I was left to wonder, how do I do that in everything else? Looking back, it may have been, for me anyway, that aha moment of things don't have to be the way they seem to have to be. That I can, with enough focus, with enough dedication, with enough resolve, have a very different life experience. After that, however, I kept wondering what it was I needed to think about. I didn't have the framework of Buddhism at the ready for me to inculcate this thinking into my daily life, but the influence was there. Now, I'm sure all of you have had some kind of similar experience where you took the gloves off and you said, today it's going to be different. And by, it certainly came to be. Question is, what do you get out of that? Do you perceive that it is from yourself, the treasure tower? Because that's what the treasure tower is. Or do you put the treasure tower inside? Well, that was interesting. I wonder if I'll ever be able to do that again. No, don't let it go. That treasure tower is there all the time. All right. I guess I'm talked out for today. I hope I touched something off in you today. This is not an easy thing to do, but I think with our chanting, with our daimoku, if we understand that that is what we're poking, that natural Buddha land availability, that enlightenment, that aha, that consistently of being in the altered space of Buddha-ness, that's your practice. You are the treasure tower. Be all of it. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for supporting by liking, subscribing, buying books, the e-books, the print books. Use the threefoldlotus.com website for anything that it can help you with. There's a large resource there, not least of which is the e-books. Give me a suggestion, by the way. Not all of my books are available as e-books on threefoldlotus.com. I've put what I think are the essentials to get you going. But if you think of a book that I've missed, you look on the bookstore and you go, I'd like to have that one, but I can't afford to pay shipping and wait for it. Maybe you're out of the country or whatever, and you'd rather have it as an ebook anyway. Then send me a note. Let me know so I can add it to the ebook list. Yeah. In the meantime, take care of your health. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.